Hello party people and welcome back to my channel. If you like the video, feel free to comment, subscribe, like, do all the stuff that you would do. Anyway, so today's video is going to be on consent tips because a lot of people mess this up and a lot of people get in trouble for it. So if you're sexually active, you should probably know these tips, whether you're in a relationship, not in a relationship, or striving to be in a relationship. So what are the consent tips? I've made a very long list, but I'll narrow it down to some of the ones that are really important. And we're just kind of going to read off the list, and if I have any comments about them, I will go ahead and share them with you. Number one is establish consent before you have sex, because obviously you want to know, do they want to have sex? Are they capable of making that decision? Are they of the age of consent? Are they over the age of consent, which would be 18 in most places? Morally, just stick with 18. If they're under 18, I don't care if it's legal, just don't roll with that. Do you just want to know, like, are they old enough? Do they consent? Do they want to do this? If they verbally are not sober enough to say yes, they want to do this, then they are not eligible for consent. And if they're under a certain age, they're not eligible for consent. Consent can be withdrawn at any time, both during, after, and before sex. So before sex is the most obvious one. After sex, actually, you know what? I disagree with that. You can't withdraw consent after you've already had sex. That is just making a false allegation, but that's my opinion. And then during sex, this is where it's really important. Even if they agreed to have sex, they can withdraw that consent at any time. You can withdraw that consent at any time. You always have the right to leave a situation that you don't feel comfortable with, and so do they. Even if you are already in the heat of things, they can leave. Just because they kissed you doesn't mean that they want everything that you're going to try to give them. Be mindful of that and don't be a creep. If you are ever falsely accused, ever, for any reason, if you are truly falsely accused, you need to make sure that you don't talk to law enforcement without representation of an attorney. So, unless they read you your rights and say you have the right to an attorney, if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you by the state, and you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or do can and will be used against you in the court of law. You need to listen for those words, and if they ever ask you for things, you don't have to cooperate with them, because police are going to try to trick you into saying things that you shouldn't say. So even if you're innocent, get a lawyer. If you're guilty, get a lawyer. If you're innocent, definitely get a lawyer. And don't speak to them without, if they're making any kind of accusations towards you and you know that they're false, then you need to have an attorney. And if the accusations are true, that's a whole other issue. But definitely still get an attorney. Always have an attorney. Make sure that you're not speaking to police or law enforcement or the media or whoever without representation that can make sure that you say the right things and do the right things so that your words are not used against you in a court of law. Let's see. Communicate early and often about what sexual acts you're okay with. One tool that you can use is a want, will, and won't list. I want this, I will try this, and I will not do that. Obviously, if they want to do something similar to, like, they want oral sex and you want it, then it's consensual as long as the consent remains throughout the ordeal. Number two is if they say, I will try, I don't know, anal, whatever you think is appropriate in this case. Whatever you think you would, whatever they say that they would try, whatever you think you would try, that's a will. They will try it. And then the last one is the won't list. What are they unwilling to do? What are you unwilling to do? Where does the boundaries lie? The earlier you talk about that and have that conversation, the more likely it is that you're going to stay safe and that you're not going to have any unconsensual mishaps happen. You're going to make sure that everyone's on the same page and that no harm, no foul is done. If you are having casual sex, I recommend that you just don't be doing anything risky. I mean, baseball player Trevor Bauer had consensual sex where he was falsely accused, because that happens a lot to men, particularly. And he has been suffering with that ever since. But the consensual sex was also violent, BDSM or whatever. And for that reason, he was no longer, he basically even if you say, oh yeah, like she wanted it, but you punched her in the face because that's what she wanted, maybe they can't legally prosecute you, but you just don't want to be in that situation where you have consensual sex with someone and you're beating them up, you slap them, you hurt them. Stay away from that kind of thing unless you're in a long-term committed relationship, preferably husband and wife. Just go down that route if you're going to ever do any of that stuff. Foreplay. Foreplay is a must because sexual intercourse can be painful, especially for the woman, even for the man, but for the woman, it can be painful if they're not lubricated. So use lubrication, obviously. Do not be neglectful of the amount of time that you take to get her in the mood, because that is what's going to make the process easier, smoother. There's going to be more lubrication, and it's going to basically be an all-around better experience, simply because of the fact that you just need that for it to be an enjoyable experience. Why does that apply to consent? It doesn't, but it's kind of just something I put on this list. In fact, I'm not even sure this is the right list, but it's got good advice. Do not hold her head down during oral sex. Do not hold his head down during oral sex. Unless this is something that you fully consent to, do not do something that could be considered very unconsensual. If she has not asked you or told you, and if you have not talked about it yet, you don't do it. You don't stick your thingy in her rear end without being told. You don't grab his ding-dong without consent. Nothing you guys do should be done without consent. You ask verbally if possible, most likely verbally. There are nonverbal cues that you can pay attention to. Obviously, it could be awkward to ask. Be a little awkward. If you're already being intimate, you can be awkward. That's a good quote. If you are already being intimate, you should be vulnerable enough to be awkward as well. Don't be rough. Especially err on the side of caution and verbally communicate if you want to be rough. If you're using your hands to stimulate certain parts of the other person, you need to not be rough. If you're being rough, you're going to hurt them, and they're not going to like that. And that potentially could get you some kind of false accusation, or even accusation of what you actually did. You hurt them. So don't be rough. Don't be rough if you never talked about it. If you never talked about it, never slap her in the face. Never slap him in the face and scratch him with your claws. Come on. Don't do things that you have not checked in on. If those things are questionable, don't hold her head down. Don't hold his head down. Don't do things that you never asked for. Okay? Or that she or he never asked for. Because if you're not respecting those boundaries, you're going to find yourself in hot water. Always ask about something that's questionable. Is it questionable that she's going to want you to caress her hair? Probably. It's probably consensual. I mean, if you're having sex, I assume she's okay with you touching her head. I assume she's okay with you touching certain parts of her. You can assume that, right? But if that consent is withdrawn, you bounce back immediately, right? And if there's anything that's in question, anything that could get you in trouble, any BDSM, any blindfolds, any weird crap, whatever you want to be doing that I don't necessarily know what your preferences are, what her preferences are, you need to talk about those controversial ones ahead of time. Don't find yourself in hot water because you were stupid. Yeah, so like that would be like hitting, spanking, biting, kinky stuff, rough, like sucking her lip, biting his lip. Don't bite his lip off. He might not like that. Are you crazy? Like, don't be weird. Yeah, those are kind of my basics. Like, if you're going to be doing this kind of thing, you need to make sure that you're being as respectful, loving, safe, kind, open, available, nurturing as you can possibly be to nurture the connection. Ordinarily, I recommend personally that you should be abstinent before marriage if possible. If you're in a long-term relationship, if you're having sex, all these rules still apply. But especially, this is if you're messing around with stuff you shouldn't be messing around with. If you're playing with fire and you're trying to have sexual intercourse before you're married with people casually, as much as I would not advise you to do that. I do not advise you to do that. This would be my advice for how to keep you as safe as possible in the event that you did do this. Whether it goes against my moral compass or not doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're going to do what you're going to do. I encourage you to stay away from sexual misconduct. I encourage you to stay away from people who you have to question their boundaries because you just don't know them very well. But keep yourself safe. Make sure that you're safe. That's the number one thing. And treat each other with respect. And in a way, I don't think you can be respectful of someone you're using just for their body, but that's a topic for another day. So go ahead, take this advice for what you pick out the parts that you want. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and do whatever else you need to do, because I'd love to see you guys in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Bye.